Okay, so we all know that the gangster days are probably behind Robert De Niro, and he's mostly reinvented himself as a comedy actor. Well, this, I believe, is his best comedy role to date. Dirty Grandpa Movie Review. So Dirty Grandpa, starring the great Robert De Niro and the up-and-coming Zac Effron, is essentially a family story about a grandfather and grandson played by respectively De Niro and Effron, who were once very close together, but as they've got older they've obviously grown apart. And this is essentially the story of how they've come together in a very wild and raucous way again. So far, thumbs up. I like the theme. Nice stuff. Now, the story doesn't begin in a way that I particularly liked. It starts at the funeral, at grandmother's funeral, but obviously Robert De Niro's wife. And the jokes fail to hit at the beginning. You've got Zac Efron's cousin Nick, and he's essentially smoking weed, drinking beer, behaving inappropriately, and talking about horny dogs in his pet shop. And it just kind of left me thinking, I really hope this isn't the comedy direction they're going in, because this isn't ringing for me. This isn't right. We then get De Niro asking Effron to take him down to Florida. Granny used to drive him, and it's a yearly tradition. He can't drive anymore, and we find out pretty immediately that Effron is actually supposed to be getting married the following week. Hence, it's a little bit tight on time. Cue overbearing dad who Effron works for, who doesn't let him speak for himself and answers for him, and also cue ball-breaking wife, who he met in the daddy's law firm, and obviously was part of daddy's big plan to get him married with the right woman. And you just know that this girl is going to be the source of immense aggro for Effron throughout the movie. Now obviously we weren't going to have a movie here without Effron agreeing, so cut to, long story short, Effron agreeing to take his grandfather very quickly, I promise honey, down to Florida for a day, maybe two, in time to come back for the wedding and get everything prepared. And this is where the story really takes off. The two title stars take center stage, Effron as the overtly pristine stuck-up lawyer, and De Niro as the overly horny, and you guessed it, dirty grandpa. We quickly discover that there's a lot more than just a yearly tradition on the Florida agenda for De Niro. He's horny. In a very, very obvious way, and he manages to, by pulling on a few heartstrings, a little bit of emotional blackmail, and obviously a few apparent, oh, this is what your grandmother wanted sentences, convinces Effron to take him down to Florida for none other than spring break at Daytona Beach. Now, you know how if you show jokes in a trailer that can ruin the jokes in the film for you? Reviews can do the same, so for the sake of not ruining the jokes, and by the way, the jokes are really, really good, but alcohol, drugs, sex, lots of sex, are all comedic tools used to great effect here. Basically guys, if movies like American Pie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and The Hangover made you laugh, you're gonna like this. No question. Sadly, it's not all shits and giggles. As with many modern comedies, there's always a few unnecessary, one-dimensional, unfunny characters just shoved in there for the sake of making the central characters that much more jump out the screen funny. And Dirty Grandpa's no exception to this rule. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's got one or two many of them. You've got the aforementioned horny dog cousin, as we'll call him, Nick. His jokes just don't ring true throughout the whole movie. He's got a few at the beginning and end, they fall flat. Now, of course, with drugs comes a drug dealer throughout the movie, and he's got one or two funny moments, mostly with Effron, but the jokes he has, aside from the main two stars, with the other supporting characters, I mean, just fall flat on their face. Probably the worst of all are the two police characters. Now, whereby the first police officer is introduced when Effron gets arrested. No spoilers, this doesn't ruin anything, don't worry. It initially starts funny, cue the second police officer entering, and this little trinity that the two police officers and the drug dealer have, trying to suggest that, yeah, you know, cops are corrupt when they're dealing with a drug dealer, especially if they're buying gear off him. You get that's the undertone, but the jokes with the two police officers and the drug dealer all together are amongst the weakest in the film. Didn't make me laugh. But don't get me wrong, De Niro is the star of this movie, as you would expect. Effron's got loads of jokes and loads of antics that he gets up to. The problem with the Effron character is that there's a really forced romance between Zac Effron and Zoe Dutch, who we found out is a girl who he used to be in photography class with before he became a stuck-up lawyer. And you just know the moment that she's introduced, with the wife calling, I don't need to ruin it for you, but you know which one of the girls he's going to end up with for the sake of the movie. Let your inner self out. That's what the movie's saying. You were once a photographer. You shouldn't be a lawyer. That's what De Niro's drilling through to him for the whole movie. And essentially her, Zoe Dutch, being in the movie and that forced romance, it makes the movie predictable. You know which way this movie's gonna end. In conclusion, guys, if you can appreciate Dirty Grandpa for what it sets out to do, tell a load of dick jokes, lots of sex, drugs, alcohol, with a funny, quite novel twist with the Dirty Grandpa being at the center of the attention, a kinda heartwarming story between a boy and his grandpa who come together again after many years apart and rediscover that relationship that they had when they were kids, is heartwarming. And if you can ignore that throwaway romance and the few unfunny supporting characters, then honestly you are gonna have a good time with this movie. The meat of the movie is the act 2, which is Effron and De Niro raving it up in Daytona Beach, and it's funny stuff. To be honest, I found myself laughing pretty much throughout the movie, and I loved watching De Niro embrace this inner adolescence and a foul mouth that he hasn't had since the days of Goodfellas. I mean, F-bombs galore in this movie, and every single instance you have for a dick joke is that De Niro doesn't miss a beat. Overall, I'm gonna score Dirty Grandpa a very solid 6.5 out of 10. Good score for a comedy, had me laughing all the way through. It's not one you must see in the cinema. There's no particular advantage of seeing it on a giant screen, but definitely one to watch with a few buddies back home with some beers. You're gonna have a good time with this movie. Lots of laughs to be found. So what did you guys think of Dirty Grandpa? You gonna see it? Is this review encouraging you to see it? Do you think it's comedic trash or is it roll around good times? And of course, there's always a question, what is your favorite De Niro comedic performance? Leave your thoughts and comments below, and until next time, see ya!